The night sea rarely tells the truth, but there are a few places where even the ocean seems afraid to speak. Just a few miles off America's eastern coast lies a spot once marked on old maps as Correctional Island. Today, that same spot appears under a different name, Blackwater Sea. Not because people forgot the island, but because the island, somehow, forgot people. On dry, silent nights, compasses begin to twitch, as if unsure of their own direction. The Coast Guard has a saying about this patch of water. This isn't calm water. It's water pretending to be calm. A silhouette rises where an island should be, yet nothing about it behaves like land. The air drops 7 degrees in just 3 seconds, with no storm, no wind shift, no scientific trigger. Meteorologists label it an unexplained microclimate, then quietly move on. Locals whisper something else. They built a prison there, a place designed to bury men the world didn't want to remember. Concrete walls, electrified fences, guard towers circling the perimeter. A 360-degree fortress the government proudly called escape-proof. But that isn't the story's twist. The twist is, nobody escaped. The walls vanished. The inmates vanished. The guards vanished. The wood, the metal, the entire physical structure, gone. All in a single night. No earthquakes, no rogue waves. Just a sudden blackout of all communication, which the Coast Guard first blamed on faulty equipment. By sunrise, when the first rescue team reached the site, the island looked as if something massive had been lifted off its surface. The soil was freshly disturbed from edge to edge, yet there were no footprints, no drag marks, no signs of struggle, only absence. Official reports don't mention it, but investigators recorded a faint tremor beneath the ground, like a pulse, slow, rhythmic, unnatural. Since that night, one question refuses to die. What kind of night makes an entire prison consume itself? Everyone who walked that island afterwards echoed the same unsettling line. It wasn't empty. It felt like something had just left. History has a strange flaw. Whatever gets written becomes truth, and whatever is erased starts to feel like it never existed at all. Correctional Island's origin is built on that same half-shadow. Half recorded, half denied, mostly missing. Long before the US took interest, the oldest surviving name for this place was Isla Vexar. Official American records claim the island was accidentally discovered in the mid-1800s. But retired NOAA cartographers quietly disagree. They insist the island has been blinking on and off nautical charts since the 1600s, appearing for a few years, then vanishing again, as if the ocean itself couldn't decide whether to reveal it or hide it. Sailors from the pre-satellite era didn't need GPS. They listened to compasses, wind patterns, and instinct. And around Isla Vexar, one thing always happened. The wind stopped, dead still. A Portuguese captain wrote in his journal, "We found an island that didn't want to be found." On the next page, a dried saltwater stain, the kind left by a wave that hits without warning. When scientists finally analyzed the island, they expected a normal volcanic signature, but the results made no geological sense. No volcanic rock, no natural sediment history, no connection to any tectonic plate. Yet the island's core was shockingly dense, almost engineered. A marine geologist summed it up perfectly. It behaves like land, but it wasn't born like land. Local fishermen added their own myth. Something ancient sleeps under the island. The land you see is just its skin. Science dismissed it as folklore. The government labeled the site a classified anomaly, but every group, scientific or superstitious, agreed on one thing. This island was never ordinary. Not before the prison, not after it. And maybe that's exactly why the government chose it. Because an island that doesn't belong to maps doesn't need to belong to history either. In the early 1900s, America slipped into a strange, uneasy chapter. On paper, everything looked perfectly normal. Off the record, the government was quietly terrified. Their official explanation was simple. High-risk criminals must be kept away from the mainland. But people who actually saw those classified files whispered something else. Criminals are just the excuse. The real reason is buried deeper. Correctional Island wasn't chosen randomly. There was an unsettling logic behind it. one the government never admitted. They needed a place that wasn't just isolated, but emotionally and psychologically distant from the rest of the world. Mainland prisons were collapsing under chaos. Riots, escape networks, rising gang influence. Island prisons seemed like the perfect solution, but that was only the version presented to the public. The truth was known to only a handful of officials. The island was already feared. At night, even the wind refused to move there. No animals lived on the land. Migratory birds tried to navigate toward it, but couldn't. They simply veered away. Researchers studying the island wrote, "Something here absorbs sound. It's like the land swallows everything." Building a prison on a place like this felt deliberate, almost strategic, as if someone decided, let dangerous minds live on dangerous ground. Let them cancel each other out. One rumor even leaked from a high-level meeting. An army officer supposedly wrote in the proposal, "If inmates vanish while attempting escape, it reduces state expenditure." That single line changed the island's purpose. Slowly, quietly, its role shifted from a correctional facility to a place where people were acceptable losses. Then came something even more disturbing. Geologists found that the island's underground foundations felt hollow. One of them reported, "The ground echoes as if there's an empty chamber beneath us." The construction team split in half, some saying the island was unsafe, others insisting it was exactly what the government needed. The prison was built anyway. Concrete walls, steel bars, watchtowers gripping the coastline. But the air remained unnervingly still, as if the island itself was watching the workers. When the first batch of prisoners arrived, the pattern began. Men woke up exhausted, with a dull haze in their eyes. Not sleepy, not sick, but as if drugged by the place itself. The warden called it mass hallucination, yet an internal report had one chilling line. "Whatever this place is, it's changing them faster than isolation ever could." Any sensible administration would have shut the prison down. The government chose the opposite. They expanded it. Because when a government invests in something dangerous, it usually means they've discovered something there, something the public will never be allowed to understand. Correctional Island was meant to control criminals, but over time, the island began shaping them, quietly, relentlessly, in its own way. And everything remained disturbingly calm until that night arrived, the night the story truly turned terrifying. That night, the island felt unnaturally calm. The waves whispered instead of crashing. The wind moved gently across the yard. Inside the prison, everything followed its usual, familiar rhythm. The guards assumed it was just another routine night, until the clock hit 10:12 p.m. In that exact minute, the island seemed to shift its breathing. A deep thump rose from underground. Slow, steady, unmistakably organic. Not a tremor, not a vibration, just a single pulse, absorbed by the prison walls like they were listening. The inmates remained quiet. Then something strange rippled across the cells, as if the air tightened for a split second. Every prisoner snapped awake at the same moment, like an invisible switch had cut their dreams short. What followed didn't feel chaotic. It felt coordinated, almost rehearsed. By the time guards rushed to the north wing, every cell door swung open. Not damaged, not forced, but unlocked, cleanly, eerily, as if one invisible hand had released all of them at once. But that wasn't the real horror. The real horror was the emptiness. Every cell was vacant. The temperature at the island's center suddenly dropped, and a faint glow began rising from the yard, perfectly circular, expanding and shrinking, like something buried deep beneath was breathing and exhaling for the final time. The glow lasted barely 30 seconds, then it vanished, as if someone had switched off the island's pulse. And with that blink, every prisoner in the facility was simply gone. No alarms triggered, no tunnels discovered, no boats missing, no bodies, no footprints, just a vast, silent prison, emptied in a single night after a single pulse. Investigators spent years trying to explain what happened, but the truth is, their official reports relied more on fear than on facts. Because some events don't leave evidence, they only leave a feeling. By sunrise, the sky above the island looked strangely blank. No storm clouds, no birds, no movement, just an empty horizon, as if the world had quietly stepped back from this place. When the first response team arrived, they didn't notice bodies or footprints or signs of chaos. They noticed silence. Not ordinary silence, the kind found in abandoned hospitals, forgotten towns, places where life has long stopped breathing. But this island had been fully alive just 12 hours earlier. Teams swept every sector. Every cell was intact, every bed untouched, and the most unsettling detail repeated itself non-stop. There were no signs of panic, no rushed footsteps, no broken doors, no signs of struggle. It was as if the people inside had no time to react, or never got the chance. The escape theory died in the very first minute. The boats were still chained. The guard logs were complete, and the shoreline told its own story. The sand lay perfectly smooth, unnaturally perfect, like nothing had stepped on it all night. Then forensics found something that didn't belong in any normal report. Across the metal railings, door handles, and reinforced bars were tiny pockets of residual heat, dozens of them, warm spots that didn't match human touch patterns. They formed odd shapes, curves, loops, spirals, zigzags, as if heat hadn't been left by hands or bodies, but by something passing through, something that moved like liquid instead of people. The central yard readings were even stranger. Electromagnetic spikes, sharp, sudden, impossible to replicate. And then came the drone footage. A drone flown the night before, intended to track weather changes, caught something it shouldn't have. A thin halo rising from the island at around 10 p.m. A perfect circle, steady, smooth, almost mechanical in its symmetry. Experts called it impossible. The official file softened the truth into one careful line: unidentified atmospheric event. Everything beyond that line was locked away in a high-security vault under a restricted access clearance. The public explanation? A mass escape, even though every piece of evidence screamed the opposite. The investigation ended. Teams left the island, but something stayed behind. A low, heavy feeling in the air. A sense that whatever happened didn't come from the human world, and whatever vanished here didn't vanish into any normal place. Wind is honest. Magnetic fields? Not so much. Yet the signal detected beneath Mount Brer broke both rules. It wasn't noise. It wasn't interference. It was a pulse. Steady, intentional, and mathematically impossible. When researchers peeled back the data layers, the shape of the anomaly revealed itself. The signal didn't travel in a straight line. It curled, spinning through the earth in a perfect spiral, like something deep below was turning, breathing, alive. But the origin point of that spiral stopped everyone cold. A flawless circle, too precise for geology, too perfect for erosion, too designed for nature. The team overlaid terrain models with historical charts, and the truth hit like a punch. A 1641 military map showed a European fort standing exactly on that point. A wooden bastion, tall palisades, a beacon tower to warn incoming ships. The layout matched the circle perfectly, but the modern soil scans told a different story. The surface was untouched. No construction, no ruins, no evidence a fort had ever stood there. And yet, deeper down, burnt coal, ancient nails, post holes. The ghost of a structure existed in the Earth's older layers, as if time had swallowed the building, but left its bones behind. The lead historian didn't offer theories. He whispered a single line. This fort wasn't lost. It wasn't abandoned. It was taken. Taken by what? Dragged where? And for what purpose? Those questions were dangerous enough. But the last measurement made everything worse. The spiral wasn't weakening, it was accelerating, as if the island wasn't sending a signal, but answering one. With that, the investigation crossed a threshold. It was no longer about a missing fort. It had slipped into something deeper, a riddle buried in time, a scar in the earth that refused to heal, a mystery that didn't care about the rules of logic. The trench they dug was barely 2 feet deep when reality cracked open. A piece of wood surfaced, blackened, dry, perfectly cut, untouched by decay. Wood shouldn't survive centuries like that, not unless something had protected it or stolen time from it. The lab results made no sense. Microscopically, the fibers were fresh, like they had been cut yesterday, but carbon dating told a different truth. 1641. So the wood was 400 years old, yet it had never aged. The researcher examining it muttered a line no scientist likes to say aloud. This happens only when something doesn't pass through time at the speed it's supposed to. That's when an older fire chief, whose family had lived near this coastline for generations, shared a memory passed down through village folklore. Our elders spoke of a hum in these lands, a vibration so deep it felt like the ground was calling out to something. The team tested the metal hinge found beside the wood. Its magnetic profile didn't match modern readings. Buried inside the metal was a faint counterspiral, the same pattern radar had detected moving beneath the island, meaning one terrifying thing. A part of the fort was still under the influence of the same force that moved it. Whatever touched the island that night never stopped touching it. The lead historian broke the silence with a single, chilling conclusion. Tears don't fall quietly. This fort wasn't destroyed. It was pulled out of its own time. If the structure had been ripped through time, then another question glowed in the room like a fuse. What about the people who lived inside it? Did they fall with the fort? Or did something else decide who stayed and who didn't? Whatever the answer, the team had no room left for guesswork. The spiral wasn't weakening, it was growing, strengthening, shifting beneath their feet like a pulse waiting for a reason to rise again. That left only one path forward: find the entry point before the island answered whatever call it was hearing. The team had hoped that once they opened the trench, the spiral field would settle. Instead, by sunrise, it reversed. Radars don't usually behave like this. They track shapes, consistent patterns, steady movement. But the island wasn't steady anymore. The spiral wasn't expanding outward. It was shifting sideways, sliding beneath the soil like something searching for a place to lock itself in. It stopped exactly where the prisoners had vanished. Seismic microphones went into the ground. For 15 minutes, nothing. Then the impossible happened. A sudden drop in temperature, one sharp second of cold, and everything returned to normal. But the soil didn't warm the way normal Earth should. It reacted as if it contained a hollow mirage, a space that wasn't fully Earth anymore. The thermal drone went up. At the island's center, the camera caught a shape, not glowing, not hot, just outlined, a perfectly straight edge, a vertical plane hanging in the air like an invisible wall. The historian whispered, almost afraid to confirm it. That's the prison wall, the exact height, the exact angle, but it's not all the way here. The drone flickered, saturated red for a second, and the fort appeared like a ghost print. Not a haunting, not a hallucination. A physical structure stuck between two states of reality. One version of the island where the fort collapsed centuries ago, and another version where it was still standing at that exact moment. Scientists tried to explain it with the only theory that made sense. The signal's pulse wasn't geological. It matched the rhythm of a human heartbeat. Not a living creature, but a living timeline. A heartbeat of history. The team realized the next pulse would reveal the true entry point. The tear between realities. They waited. The ground trembled lightly. The pulse returned, but the fort didn't appear. The prisoners didn't appear. The timeline didn't appear. Instead, something else stepped into view. A figure, standing motionless at the center of the island, facing the team. A silhouette shaped like a man from 1641. The clothing, the posture, the outline, unmistakable. But his shadow wasn't on the ground. It slid away, dissolved, as if the man didn't belong to this world at all. The team leader managed only one line, barely audible. If he's from the original timeline, then someone or something never left the island. The silhouette remained motionless for several seconds. No movement, no sound. It was as if the island itself had sent its first witness to the outside world after 400 years. Every sensor failed. No radar, no thermal scan, no electromagnetic reading could detect him, and yet a human form stood there, unmistakable, solid, alive, and impossible at the same time. The historian's voice trembled. "This is Captain Rourke, the island's first warden." But Rourke had died centuries ago, 1641. It should have been impossible, and yet there he was, real enough to freeze the team's breath. The ground shivered, a faint spike pulsing through the instruments, and the radar captured the outline of the entire fortress for a microsecond, a blink of history flashing across modern technology. The team proposed a theory. Not paranormal, not supernatural, something stranger. The island didn't lose its prisoners. The island lost its timeline. Beneath the island, their instruments revealed a folded pattern of geology, an anomaly so precise it behaved like a membrane in time, neither fully open nor fully closed. Anyone who entered it could not fully die, could not fully live. The warden, the prisoners, all trapped in the same frozen loop, existing and not existing, alive and erased. A prison outside of time. The warden turned slowly toward the team, as though some memory or some force was drawing him forward. Then came the pulse, sharp, instant, final, and just like that, he vanished. The fort blinked out. The timeline sealed itself. The scientist's final report was classified, locked in a vault. Only one sentence reached the public. The island didn't allow a breakout. It kept everyone inside, including time. When the team returned to the mainland, the only truth they carried with them was chillingly clear. You entered my timeline. Your shadow is still here. It never truly disappears. It only changes shape. The pulse beneath Mount Brer wasn't just a geological heartbeat. It was a flare, a memory pushing through the cracks of time, as if the island was still trying to prove it existed. Sometimes it showed itself as the warden's shadow, sometimes as the faint blueprint of the old fortress, sometimes as a cluster of signals, like whispers from the 17th century still trying to reach the modern world. The prisoners hadn't escaped. They hadn't been hidden. Their timeline had slipped, and the island was holding them the way amber holds an insect, perfect, preserved, and unable to leave. But the disturbing detail came last. When the team reviewed the final day's readings, they noticed a subtle shift. The pulse wasn't steady. It was growing, stretching, as if the membrane between timelines was slowly thinning. Quietly, away from the public, scientists whispered, if that barrier ever weakens, something might return before the island sinks again. People tend to forget this part, the part where these stories don't actually end. Vanishing islands, disappearing castles, haunted prisons. They live on in our blind spots, waiting for the world to notice them again. We ignore them until they send another signal. If this story has left a quiet tension in your mind, then maybe the island has felt you too. The real question isn't, where did the island go? The real question is, when will it return? For now, think about this. What's the strangest story you've ever heard where everything vanished and then came back?